Okay, we're going to talk about the repair of a ColorLogic SP05 52S LED 50 pool light. Mine was about 14 years old and we had some significant issues. So a quick overview. All right, so we're looking at a Hayward ColorLogic pool light. These are extremely expensive, and so I just thought I'd throw this out here to try to help people that want to avoid paying 900 bucks. You turn on the pool light, the breaker, the GFI flips. So I found this post on Amazon, and I'll give you the link below. But essentially, this is the LED board on the ColorLogic 50 LED. I don't know what the whole model number is, but basically this is it. This is the guts. When I looked at this device, I didn't have anything, no water, no condensation, nothing was going on with it. But certainly every time the breaker would flip, it would, the lights weren't working. So what I did is a couple things. So I followed the instructions of the gentleman online, and I'll give you those steps below, but this is just kind of the videotape so you can see what you're going to be working with here. And I'll reverse this so you can kind of see how we're going to put it all back together. So a couple things. One, I took all the screws out, and I would take a picture of the screws come out because there's some long ones, there's some short ones. You want to make sure you put them in the right place. Second thing is I gasketed, I took off the rubber seal, which was in pretty good shape actually, and I put a rubber sealant on. I'm using Gorilla Glue because pretty much I love Gorilla Glue for everything. It's not a testimonial or an advertisement, but essentially that stuff is pretty awesome. It's got me out of a lot of trouble. So what this plastic cover comes off right here with this little screw here, I am going to clean this whole area up of all this basically rotting rubber and what have you. As a result, I've got a salt pool, so it's really pulling it apart. But I'm going to take all that stuff off. You can see that this board is sealed against the back plate. So you can't pull that off. And so essentially I tried it, I tested it, lights came on, so I know there's water getting into the light, and I'm hoping this is going to fix it. When I assemble this, I'm going to put some silicone. I put silicone on the underside of this, and then I'm going to put a bead of silicone on the top of it, and I'm going to reassemble it, and we'll see where we go from there. Alrighty. So we'll go through the steps. First most important thing to do is turn off and disconnect the power. Then the second thing you want to do is you more than likely want to get in the pool if you haven't taken your pool light out for some time, because the screw is most likely rusted or has had salt corrosion on it or what have you, and it's just gonna be really tough to get out, and you don't want to strip that screw. So you get in the pool at 12 o'clock, you basically pull that screw out, and then the whole unit should really just come right out of the wall. If there should be some slack on the cable to let you put it up on the pool deck. If you don't have slack, I guess you could question the intelligence of your installer, swear a whole bunch, but then your two options are basically replace the light, the entire light in the cable, and or drain the pool below the pool light and then wait for it to dry and then repair it then. Third thing you're going to do is disassemble and remove the 14 screws that are on the back plate. As you take that off, you'll take out the ground screw as well, and then it basically just comes apart really easily, and you're going to see a glass enclosure that's seated on a rubber grommet. You'll pull that off, and then there's an LED cover with a center screw, and then you basically pull that LED cover off and screw and just essentially remove that all off. Be careful when you're taking that rubber grommet that you don't rip it, because I'm certain they're not replaceable. Just let it sit in the sun, let it dry out. If there is condensation or water in there, that's what's calling the GFI to trip. And then after that, after that 2 to 3 hours, you can go over and test your light. If it turns on, then that's clearly what the issue was. You had water in the light. If not, then you've got something else going on. So these are the parts and pieces. So you can kind of see the glass enclosure sitting on the towel. The LED is actually affixed onto the light itself. You can see that little center screw. And then you've got the entire plastic enclosure. That plastic enclosure is like a clamshell and basically is a compression for that glass lens on top of that plastic lens, which basically makes the seal. One optional thing you can do is you can clean the screws. Just get all the screws out, put them into some vinegar, and just let them sit while you're doing this work. Brush them off with a toothbrush, and you should be good to go. I find this really helps with putting the cover back on, as the ground screw is sometimes pretty tough to screw in, but you get all that gunk off of it. It goes in pretty easily, and you probably don't have to get back in the pool. So now that you've got the glass plate off, we want to really clean everywhere that's on that back plate where the LEDs are placed. You additionally want to go ahead and clean the glass where you're going to fix the glue or the silicone. So all that needs to be cleaned really well. Clean the rubber grommet as well. It's going to be extremely dirty. This rubber actually with my salt pool is actually created kind of an oily film that's like ink almost. So you want to clean that off with water. Do not use alcohol. Once you get that all dried out, nice and dry, then you can go ahead and use a marine-based silicone. I use Gorilla Glue. And then put a small bead around the glass and then affix the rubber grommet on top of that and press down on it and make sure it's thin, clean off any excess. I can't emphasize that, you know, more Gorilla Glue is not a better solution than a small bead. Now, after that's done, wait 30 minutes for that to essentially set while you're working on other elements. Here's a picture of that, so you can see the small little silicone that's going around the edge. Next, we're going to put the rubber grommet onto the device itself, but before we do that, we need to put sealant on the top of the rubber grommet. So once that's done, then we can actually put the plastic cover back on, screw that down with that tiny little small center screw, and then take the glass and put the glass down. Now what's most important is the glass has a mark on it at the top and it says top. You got to put top right where the ground screw is. If you don't, you won't be able to seat the plastic enclosure on top of it. So make sure there's a little indentation at the top. If you don't get that on there, it won't seat. Once that's all done, you wait 2 to 3 hours for the sealant to really cure, and then you should be good to go. So here's a picture of the silicone that's on top of the rubber grommet. Again, less is more in this case. And then you also have the sealant at the on the underside too that we did already previously. Now that's that top what I was talking about. So that's that indent that has to go where the ground screw is. Now we're going to reassemble. Note that there's some longer screws. You don't want to put those into the shorter screws because you'll basically be breaking the threads, and there are essentially 4 long screws that tie the whole enclosure together, but the smaller screws actually create the compression for the glass lens to prevent water from getting in. So, final overview, and this is the outcome.
Okay, so we're back, and the light is now working. It goes through its random things, or I can set it for whatever color I want. So it saves $750. Actually, probably more with a professional install and repulling all the cable. So, a couple things. When you're putting this glass on, it'll say top and bottom. Make sure you put the top at the actual top of this device where the ground screw goes. If you don't do that, then you won't be able to seat it. I put silicone on the other side of the gasket, and yeah, so we're back in business. I hope this helps others, and hopefully it's not leaking on the back side here with this rubber grommet, which is unbelievably messy, just by the way. So just have lots of wipes, because for whatever reason, that just is kind of just turned into like an oily mess. All right, talk to you guys.